In today's lecture, we will discuss the integration techniques of vector calculus. The first slide over here is a pictographic representation of the magnetic field, but I have used it to represent divergence and curl. This picture here represents the Earth's magnetosphere. We now discuss line, surface and volume integrals in detail. If you look at the first diagram on the left, in the XYZ plane, it represents a path P taken from the point A to the point B and an infinitesimal line element dl. We can define line integral to be an integral going from A to B of V dot dl along a path P. This represents the line integral of a vector V along the path P from A to B. The simplest example is the work done given by integral F dot dl, where F is the force and dl the infinitesimal displacement. Whenever the line integral is independent of the path taken, it represents vector functions which are conservative, and usually for such functions, the closed integral V dot dl is 0. This diagram is representative of a surface integral in the XYZ plane. If you look on the right hand side, we have drawn a patch of surface with a small infinitesimal area dA. Usually the outward drawn normal n is considered positive, and the closed integral V dot dA represents the surface integral of the normal component of the vector. In the diagram shown in the previous slide, V represents the vector function, dA the infinitesimal patch of area with a direction defined as perpendicular to the surface. If the surface is closed, the integral is written as closed integral V dot dA. Next we come to the concept of flux. The word flux means to flow. The simplest example is the flow of a liquid. We can also have a flow of heat. However, this idea can be generalized to a physical quantity that does not actually flow. And an example is the electric field. Now consider a closed surface S and suppose it encloses a volume V. Let us choose a small area element dA. N represents the outward drawn normal to dA. Let us define a vector H which represents the amount of heat that flows through unit area in unit time. The heat flowing out of the elemental area dA would be the vector H dot N dA. The total heat flowing out of the surface S is then given by the integral of H dot N dA. This surface integral represents the flow of heat or flux of heat. If we generalize the idea of flux to represent the surface integral, we can essentially find out the flux of any physical quantity that does not actually flow. And as I said before, for an example, the electric field. Hence, we may say that the flux of any vector is the surface integral of the normal component of the vector taken over a closed surface. In the case of heat flow, the amount of heat flowing out of the surface will lead to a decrease in the amount of heat given by minus dq by dt. That is, the integral over S H dot N dA is equal to minus dq by dt. This is possible only if heat is conserved. That is, after an initial heating, no further heat energy is generated or absorbed. We cannot speak of a total heat inside a volume if the heat were being generated over. Let us consider the flux from an infinitesimal cube. Let the edges of the cube be lined up along the axes as shown. We would like to find out the flux of a vector field through the surface of the cube. This is done by summing up the fluxes out of each face. The outward flux out of face 1 is given by minus integral C dot N dA, which is equal to minus C1x delta y, minus C1x delta y delta z. The outward flux out of phase 2 is given by C2x delta y delta z. Now in the first case, the minus sign occurs because the outward drawn normal is in a direction which is opposite to the positive x direction. So the difference between C1 and C2x is found by a Taylor series expansion as follows. C2x is equal to C1x plus delta Cx by delta x delta x. Hence, the flux out of phase 1 and phase 2 when we sum up with the correct directions is given by C1x delta y delta z plus within brackets delta Cx by delta x minus C1x close brackets delta y delta z. Similarly, flux out of phase 3 and 4 respectively is given by delta Cy by delta y, delta x delta y delta z, and delta Cz by delta z, delta x delta y delta z for phases 5 and 6. So if we sum up all the fluxes, we will get within brackets delta Cx by delta x plus delta Cy by delta y plus delta Cz by delta z, delta x delta y delta z. Hence divergence means outward flow. So the total flux out of the cube is given by delta Cx by delta x plus delta Cy by delta y plus delta Cz by delta z, delta x delta y delta z, where the expression within the parenthesis represents divergence of C and delta x delta y delta z represent the volume element delta v. But we know that flux is the surface integral of the normal component of the vector over the area. So integral of ds C dot n is going to be equal to divergence of C over an elemental volume delta v. So what we have just shown is that the outward flux from the surface of an infinitesimal cube is equal to the divergence of the vector multiplied by the volume of the cube. Hence, divergence means outward flow. Next, we state and prove Gauss divergence theorem. The statement is the surface integral of the normal component of any vector field taken over a closed surface is equal to the divergence of the vector field taken over the volume enclosed by the surface. Mathematically, we can write this as A dot ds is equal to integral of divergence of A dv, the volume being enclosed by the surface. On the right hand side is a photograph of Carl Friedrich Gauss as has been taken from Wikipedia. To prove Gauss theorem for divergence, we consider the following figure. In the XYZ space, we have a patch of area and let us select 2 points P and Q. Let there be a small strip which is represented by DSP, DSQ. Now as the statement goes that integral of A dot ds is equal to divergence of A dv where S encloses V. So what we do is we begin from the right hand side and we expand divergence of A dv. Now I am writing the triple integral only in the first expression. Subsequently it will be assumed that when I am writing an integral over V, it means a triple integral. So what we do is that we separate out the three components as integral delta ax by delta x dx dy dz plus integral delta ay by delta y dy dx dz plus integral delta az by delta z dz dx dy. Now consider integral delta x by del x dx dy dz. This basically represents the value of ax at the point x, q, y and z minus the value of ax at the point x, p, y and z dy dz. X, p, y and z are coordinates of the point P, x, q, y and z are the coordinates of point Q. At P we have dy dz is equal to minus dx. At P we have dy dz equal to dsx. Now the minus sign at P comes because the outward drawn normal is in the negative x direction. So now we will write down integral delta ax by delta x dx dy dz as integral of ax dsx, which has been evaluated over the entire strip given by SP SQ. Similarly, we can write down delta ay by delta y del x dx dy dz as integral of ay dsy, integral delta az by delta z dx dy dz as being equal to integral of az dsz. So grouping it all together, the components, we get the integral within brackets ax dsx plus ay dsy plus az dsz equal to integral a dot ds. Therefore, the integral of divergence of a dv is equal to integral of A dot ds, where S encloses V. Next, we define the circulation of a vector field. On the top right hand corner, we have chosen a bar magnet, and you can see the iron filings, how they are aligning themselves to show you the existence of the magnetic lines of force. So now consider a closed loop in space which is represented by a curve gamma. We define the line integral of the tangential component of a vector C around this loop as the circulation of C. Though the definition of circulation of a vector originated in defining the circulation of a liquid, it has now come to mean something more general. The line integral of any vector around a closed loop, and it holds for any vector. That is the definition of circulation. Now, if we apply a cut to the original gamma, we effectively have two curves, gamma 1 given by gamma A and a common curve gamma AB, gamma 2 given by gamma B and the common curve gamma A. Since in calculating the line integral, the direction of gamma 1 and gamma 2 along gamma AB will be opposite, it will cancel out. So the sum of the two circulations just gives the line integral around the original curve. So now what we do is, we take the loop gamma and we subdivide this original loop, which encloses a surface area S, into smaller and smaller loops, each enclosing an infinitesimal surface. And let each infinitesimal loop be square in shape and enclose an area which is essentially flat. Now we are in a position to establish Stokes theorem. This is the diagram that we are going to use to establish Stokes theorem. You can see there is a square. On the x-axis, the movement from 4 to 2 is delta x. On the y-axis, the movement from 1 to 3 is delta y. Now, C is pointing in a direction, and for all the 4 lines, I have drawn the direction of C. Now, the thing is that when you are moving along the x direction in 1, you are moving in the positive x direction. But if you look at 3, then the direction of C is in one direction and your movement along 3 will be in a direction which is negative x direction. So this contribution will come with a minus sign. We now state Stokes theorem, which is the line integral of a vector field around a closed curve is equal to the curl of the vector field over the area enclosed by the curve. Let us select an infinitesimal square in the xy plane. Then the closed integral C dot dl will consist of 4 components which are given by integral cx1 delta x plus integral cy2 delta y minus integral cx3 delta x minus c by 4 delta y. Now, in order to express cx3 and cx1 as related to each other, we use the Taylor series expansion, which is given by cx3 is equal to cx1 plus delta cx by delta y. So cx1 minus cx3 will be equal to minus delta cx by delta y. Similarly, cy2 minus cy4 will be equal to delta cy by delta x. In this slide on the right hand side, you can see a photograph of Sir George Stokes, which I have taken from Wikipedia. And continuing with Stokes theorem, we say, therefore, the closed integral C dot dl is equal to integral of delta cy by delta x minus delta cx by delta y, delta x, delta y. As you can see that the expression within the brackets is nothing but the z component of the curl of C. Since the outward drawn normal to delta x delta y is in the positive z direction, we can now effectively write this as closed integral C dot dl is equal to integral of curl of C over the surface area ds, where the curve gamma encloses the surface S. We now come to the most important part of this lecture, and that is the physical significance of divergence and curl. The Gauss divergence theorem connects the flux of a vector to its divergence. As has already been established, it is not necessary for a physical quantity to actually flow to possess a divergence. Positive divergence for fluid flow represents a source or a point where the fluid is expanding and its density is decreasing. Positive divergence may also indicate a point where the fluid is entering the field. For the electric field, a physical quantity that does not actually flow, positive divergence would indicate a positive. Point of zero divergence in the case of fluid flow indicates a fluid that is incompressible, or the amount of fluid entering the field is exactly the same as that leaving it. A vector field like a magnetic field has zero divergence. The magnetic lines of force accordingly form closed curves. A zero divergence field is always expressible as the curl of another vector. As divergence of B is equal to 0, then B can be expressed as curl of A, and it is well known that divergence of curl of any vector, and in this case the divergence in curl of A is 0. We know that divergence of a curl is always 0, and it can be also verified algebraically. Zero divergence also implies the absence of sources or sinks, that is, the isolation of a single pole is impossible. Such a field is also known as solenoidal field. Curl-free fields are also known as arotational fields. Their lines of force do not form closed curves. They are derivable from a scalar, that is E is equal to minus gradient of phi, and curl of E is 0. Such fields are known as conservative fields. It is well known mathematically that if a field is expressed as the gradient of a scalar, it is a conservative. Since the line integral of the gradient of a scalar field is independent of the path taken, the scalar represents a potential. Potential indicates the work done, which is always conserved. It is important that an electric field due to the static charges be curl-free. However, an electric field generated by a changing magnetic field has a non-zero curl.